it was the same as cooking with kids, like the sense of fun and playing with food and trying ingredients and, sampling things and just, bringing fun into healthy eating and healthy cooking and making people aware of ingredients maybe they'd never thought about.
Hello and welcome to Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. I am Dr. Antonella Kaler and I am on a mission to find out exactly what it takes to build an indestructible foundation and achieve our best reality. I am thrilled to bring you stories of inspiring women who were fierce and relentless when pursuing their passions, who did not blame their struggles on so-called character flaws, and who took control to lead extraordinary lives. If you're a woman who is tired of feeling like your life is merely a product of cause and effect, and you are ready to be the woman that causes the effect, keep listening to learn the necessary insights to navigate life's toughest challenges, break through the most disheartening plateaus, and unleash your inner alpha woman. And don't forget, you have the exclusive opportunity to win our Alpha Empowerment Book Bundle. It's 3 life-changing books whose authors you heard speak on the show and a 12-week wellness program by me. So please visit www.thefemaleproject.net/podcast to find out exactly what you need to do to participate. So good luck and thank you for listening. Hello, Alphas, and welcome to another episode of Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. Today, I bring you an awesome interview with Anna Sward, the creator of Protein Pow. In case you have not heard of Protein Pow, it is amazing. It is the #1 resource for protein powder-based recipes. I've been obsessed with it for the past 5 years, especially with the dessert section of the website. Now, Anna is not only a published author, she's also a Ph.D., an entrepreneur, and about the nicest person on the planet because she agreed to do this interview on her birthday. So we are so lucky to talk to her. Anna and I discuss why healthy eating does not have to suck, how you can have your cake and eat it too, and the recipe anatomy that you can try today to design the ultimate homemade protein bar. So stay tuned and get ready to think outside the shake with the ultimate alpha woman, Anna Sward.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm very excited. Very excited.
I promise I will not sing because probably people will change the station at that point. It's a room clearing kind of skill.
I can totally empathize with that. So we're all good. You have a baby.
I do. A 2-year-old. Well, almost 2. 21 months.
Just one?
Just the one. Oh my God. I can barely handle just the one.
I know. I respond the same way where just people are like, just one? And I'm like, don't say just. It is
yes.
a lot. I don't know how people do it with like 5 or whatever. Mine is almost 4 in a month. I know.
Oh, that's such a good age.
Yeah, I know. Like the singing and the talking and the whole, I know.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, much less on your birthday. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful connecting with the ultimate protein pow wizard of all time.
Oh, thank you.
So before we get into the origin story and the bulk of it, I have to tell you a story about how you indirectly got me in big trouble.
Oh, God.
In 2013, I was on this clean eating bender. So the, craziness of that's a separate story. But, I had it in my mind like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do all of these healthy foods. And everybody tells you like, oh yeah, just stick to it. And then you're not going to miss any of the desserts. You're not going to miss any of the sweets because, your brain is going to forget the association of the dopamine and the pleasure centers, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's a lot of horse poop. Yeah, I missed it more than ever, and I was going crazy. And I was actually in the military at the time, and I was working in a hospital. And in the middle of one of my shifts, I found your website, and I swear it's like I could hear the angels breaking into song. I was just looking at it. It's like, that scene from Pulp Fiction when they open the suitcase and it's just glowing with gold. That's what I felt like. And I found nothing better to do than I'm like, oh my God, like I must have access to this at all times. And so I got a binder and I'm like, I'm just going to print the whole website. So, of course, throwing that into the main office administrator printer, it did not cross my mind that it was over 700 pages.
Oh, you can
pictures
see
and
that.
recipes. Yeah, no, you can actually, like, there's a setting that you can make
Oh
the
my
website
God.
available offline, but the whole thing just goes into you can do it as a whole print file.
Oh my
So
God.
that poor printer was clinking and grunting and just setting itself on fire. You hear it struggling. And then I hear my major, who was in charge of me, say, "Who the hell started this print job?" I'm like, uh-oh.
Oh my God.
So, of course, it didn't take them much investigating to the IP addresses. They found it to, old Captain Chester's computer right away. And then I did blab my way out. I said that, I think that it's great. It's a healthy living initiative. And we have all these patients coming in. And my plan is to give out
That's so
one
funny.
recipe per patient. I'm like, I'm printing this so we can give out one recipe per patient to get them more interested. So I blabbed my way out barely. Obviously, nobody believed me, but I actually did end up doing that. We did end up distributing the recipes.
That is so funny. Well, thank goodness. I thought you were going to say something terrible, like
Oh, no.
ended up poisoning like everybody with like.
Oh, no. It's just my over enthusiasm, because I've never seen anything like that before, and I've never found anything like that before. So when I kind of saw what the sort of the goal and the principles that you outlined on your site it was just mind blowing. It's like I said, it was almost a religious experience.
Oh, this is so cool. Thank you. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
So now that you know that wonderful story about me, let's focus back in on you. And why don't you share a little bit about how you found your passion and what it is you do exactly these days, and what your big projects are, and how your life has led you to the life of ultimate wizardry.
Oh, you want the whole story from the very, very beginning.
Oh, not like I was born on October 25th, and it was an interesting first couple of years. Don't remember much of those. Just the general. How did it get born? This idea.
Yeah. So I was doing my PhD in. Well, I guess it started before. So when I was in high school, my dad was really into nutrition and weightlifting. So, he was there all the time. Our house was full of protein powders. So from pretty early kind of high school years, I'd always make things with a protein powder because I was bored of the idea of shakes. And, my dad was always drinking the shakes. And I'm like, Dad, make some pancakes, right? So I started cooking with the stuff. And when it came down to go move away, I went to Scotland to do my undergrad, and I continued this whole thing. And then I got into going to the gym and weight training myself. So the place I went to university had this one health food shop, and it was a tiny old lady that was behind it. And it was their protein powder. They only had a few tubs, and they had the tubs that were massive tubs with oiled men kind of on the label. And I would buy, I would go in there regularly and buy these tubs, and she'd look at me like, is that for your boyfriend, And I'm like, it's for me. And she was like, oh God. Like, you know how there's like a bit of a grandma generation that thinks of protein powder like steroids. Yeah. So she's looking at me like, oh God, because, like a smallish girl and they're buying these giant tubs. So then I walk through campus holding it, feeling sometimes a bit self-conscious, because it was like an oiled
It attracts
man.
attention, sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is like before. It's like the 2002 to 2006 that I was there. So I was just, I was cooking with the stuff and I was doing it. And yeah. So the years went on. I finished my degree. Then I did a master's and I did a PhD. And when I was finishing the PhD, I was kind of getting a bit burnt out by writing the thesis and doing all the, library work and theory and, how it goes, the whole blah, blah, blah. And I was getting a bit like, oh, I need something else in my life. So a friend of mine was like, why don't you start a blog, right? And I'm like, I do not want to just talk about like myself. I don't know like what about. And she's like, well, what's the one thing you're passionate about? And I'm like, well, it's going to the gym and cooking like really weird food, because for a really long time I'd go to class and I'd bring these Tupperwares full of cakes or tiny green pancakes, and everybody would always be amused by it and ask me to share the recipe when they tried, a muffin that was actually good for them and, kind of nutrition rich and so on. So she's like, well, write about that. And I'm like, great. So I started the website in 2011, and, there's some posts on it that are still from back then that are kind of buried, and they're literally stream of thought, with a recipe in there and pictures from a camera that was like really bad resolution. So they look a bit like, but what inspired me to create it was that at that point, around the 2010 era, and this ties to what you were talking about, there weren't any resources online.
No, there's nothing.
With it. Yeah, there wasn't. There were obscure kind of bodybuilding forums where you'd get a recipe where the person just literally substituted flour in their grandma's cookies for protein powder and ended up with things that look like shoes, like a rubberized object thing on a plate, And I'd always look at those recipes and be like, ugh, like as a quote unquote normal person. Well, in the sense that I wasn't into, bodybuilding intensely or, an athlete of that kind of mass building, which is where you saw a lot of these recipes at, which is in, bodybuilding forums and people that were eating for macros as opposed to for taste or,
right.
It was one of those things where people often assume that the people making recipes like I was using protein would be bodybuilding style, mass building kind of muscle orientated people.
Sure.
And in reality, what I found was that a lot of people that were in that mentality, chicken, broccoli, rice, didn't really care about taste that much. They didn't really care about having a really decadent cake because, they kind of learned not to really bother with that or,
if you're doing meal plans with chicken, broccoli, rice, anything that's even a little bit outside of that, even if it is rubberized, seems amazing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, there is an overlap between, people that do competitions and so on and eat clean and then they find, oh my God, I can eat my cake and have it and eat,
yes,
fulfill
have
that.
Your cake and eat it too, absolutely.
Yeah. Fulfill that desire. Because what I saw was that the people that were coming to the website and reading were people that just, there was people that wouldn't want to sacrifice their love of food in pursuit of a healthy diet, and at the end of the day, there were also quite a bit of people dieting in general because there's that notion that you go on a diet that's bland or boring. And you always end up craving food because life is about, having fun and enjoying what you're doing or whatever. It's not just about having your macros and that's it. If you actually love and gain a lot of pleasure from eating, right, and from food, you end up craving that and then you don't have it. And a lot of people will do like a diet plan and then they just fall off the wagon, as they say.
And fall off hard, yeah.
And they're like, oh, I failed. I might as well eat like 5 cakes or whatever. And then it's really hard to get them back. And there's that notion of, kind of, what do you call, trying to think. Well, anyway, the point is that when you want something you can't have, you want it more. And then
so it's like the marshmallow test that they did with the kids, right? They put a kid in the room with a marshmallow, and if they didn't say anything, most of the time the kid didn't touch the marshmallow. But then you said, this is a marshmallow, you're not allowed to eat. Like every single kid ate the marshmallow.
Yeah, exactly. There's that, like when you make something like banned or forbidden, or you imbue food with fear. That for me was the biggest driver and something I feel really passionate about is this idea of taking fear out of certain foods, right? So pizza's not a baddie, so I wanted to make foods that people love eating into satisfying foods. So I started this website, and because the angle was from a foodie perspective as opposed to just a nutrition angle, I found myself building a lot of recipes from scratch because there wasn't any resource that actually created a recipe around protein. A lot of them use protein as opposed to flour as like a substitution. And I learned through a lot of trial and error that that's going to lead to disaster after disaster because it behaves completely differently. So you have to build a recipe from scratch, right? Like everything around protein and how it behaves. Otherwise, you end up with, rubbery dry pancakes and muffins that are like, rubberized and, all these pseudo food looking objects on a plate. So
and that just further reinforces this diet's going to suck.
Yeah, exactly, right? And people often associate, like, they'll have one of those foods and then assume that all, like, diet or macro or nutritious food is going to be gross or untasty or bland or unsatisfying, when in reality it doesn't have to be like that. And I think, putting that out there and letting people consume that way of cooking and actually innovating themselves was really what got me really excited about the whole idea, was connecting with people. Back then, social media was really, an open platform where people shared their ideas, what you posted, people saw and talked to you, and you talked to them. And it was so open and friendly, and we got so many ideas. And anyway, the website kind of started going and going, and before long, some of the biggest kind of protein companies got in touch to create content for their website, for products, and, you know, kind of to work with me because they saw that that was happening. But that took a while, because I remember at first I went to, I don't know if you know My Protein,
Yes.
and I went to them and I said, guys, you know, like this protein cooking thing has, you know, it's a future. Like protein shakes are, you know, they're what they are, but the audience is going to be, and, you know, will always be pretty niche, and there's a ceiling to it, what you can do with it. Whereas with cooking, you can actually, by using protein and food, you can use it in so many different ways, you know? Mm-hmm. So I said, guys, let's do a cookbook, right? This isn't like 2012. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, that's a bit, you know, like that's, yeah. I'm like, guys, have like a recipe section on your website. You can actually sell more product and, you know, engage people more. They're like, no. So I'm like, whatever, I'm going to do it, right? I'm going to self-publish the book. So in 2013, I wrote, edited, photographed, and drew all these cartoons.
Yes, they're awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the cartoon element is so fun for me because it's a way to communicate non-verbally just the fun element of it and the goofy kind of, you know, part of it.
Exactly. And it takes kind of, it's like, you know, there's so many recipe books out there that you feel like you need to have a degree, like you need to be almost a semi-professional chef to actually get through it. And they're written from a very pretentious kind of standpoint, you know?
Yeah, like not you know, like not really open.
They're not accessible. No,
accessible. That's what I'm looking.
Yeah, and then you're reading through it, and you're like, okay, well, I can't do that, and I can't do that, and no, I cannot purchase vanilla handpicked by nuns in Madagascar. Store-bought will have to do. And like one of the things, like your recipes, they're so simple. And even if you're the type of person who is afraid of cooking and who thinks that putting something to reheat in the microwave is actually cooking, and that's kind of your comfort zone, it is so simple. Like you only need a couple of things. Like it's very approachable. Like that's what appealed to me instantly.
And I remember thinking, you know, at first when I started getting all these emails from like young guys saying, I just made my first cake. Like just so proud, right? And from 2013 onwards, I started doing cooking workshops, right? And people would come in and I'd had them in London, in New York, and in Sweden, and people from all over the world come here and we cook, right? And often they sit there and we start off and everyone's, you know, feeling a bit shy because, you know, when they do like, say what your name is, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, you know. And I'm like, you know, I lay out the table full of ingredients, right? All kinds of nuts and seeds and unusual ones that maybe people haven't tried, like nutritional yeast or, you know, whatever. Sure. Is in there. And I'm like, guys, we're going to use this stuff. And they're like, where's a recipe? And I'm like, there's no recipe. And they're like, oh God, right? So I'm like, and they start off like with the sense of
panic.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm going to ruin this, right? And I'm like, no, like, let's start off by making a protein bar, or like little truffles. And I tell them, I walk them through what I call the anatomy of it, what you need, like nut butter, you need protein powder, you need some kind of milk to bind it together, and a body, which is like ground almonds or oats or something to give it, you know, texture. And they'll start putting these ingredients in and be like, oh God, am I doing this right? Like tiny bit by tiny bit into their bowl. And oftentimes, you know, there'll be like someone in the corner just looking at their bowl all sad, like, I ruined this, you know, I can't do this. And I'm like, no, listen, it's like a huge part of it is like learning to trust yourself, have fun, and know that you cannot necessarily ruin something. I mean, unless you add a bunch of salt, right? So you start with a tiny batter and you keep adding to it until you get to the point, even if you end up with, you know, a thing full of bars, right? And when doing these classes with kids, you know, I tell them, guys, put on a glove, like, you know, a silicone glove, and reach in the nut butter with your hand and put it in there, you know, put it in your bowl. And you know, people get like so excited by playing with food. Because there's this, you know, with recipes and cookbooks, there's often this mentality of, you know, set the oven to this temperature, sift the flour, and do all these things, which, you know, I'm not saying, that has a place, the technical cooking.
But it can be
extra.
intimidating for a lot of people. Like if you just want to make a couple of positive changes and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to learn to quote unquote cook more healthy meals. And then you open a couple of recipe books and it's like, okay, well, never mind.
Well, yeah. And there's a sense of, okay, if you don't do things within the exact parameters of a recipe, you won't do it. You won't be able to do it. So when doing the workshops, we were like, I can't do this. Like, I've never done it. Like, I've seen recipes for your bars or whatever, but I'm scared. I can't do it. Like, there's a sense of, if you've never done it, you can't do it. And then it's freeing people to play with food. And I remember before starting my first workshop, I went with my mother-in-law, she's a teacher, to do a cooking with kids class. So it was first graders. And what's funny to me is that it was almost the same. It was, when our workshop with the, adults got going, it was the same as cooking with kids, like the sense of fun and playing with food and trying ingredients and, sampling things and just, bringing fun into healthy eating and healthy cooking and making people aware of ingredients maybe they'd never thought about, like coconut flour is one of those that you get introduced to. And finally, you learn how to use it and you can improvise and, do things and have fun with the whole idea of cooking, like.
And it's so delicious. Like if you make a protein bar following the anatomy that you describe, it's just there's some pretty decent tasting store-bought ones, but it does not compare. Even the best one that you can buy, it's just a whole other level if you can make your own.
Totally, because you cater to your taste buds, right? And the beauty of it is some people like things really sweet, some people don't, and other people want to use natural sweeteners and they don't mind things like agave or maple syrup or coconut sugar. Other people want to go low carb so they can add stevia drops, or, erythritol or whatever else. So there's that element of freedom to choose, that's not imposed on you from whatever company you buy from. And it's, you choose your ingredients. Do you want to make a bar that's lower in carbs, for example, by adding almond flour instead of ground oats? Or there's that freedom and fun part that I think, now as a mom, I'm really starting to take advantage of even more with my kid, just because we can cook and we have the same sense of experimentation and exploration of food together. That's a lot of fun. And it is that same, we make cookies and cakes and we just kind of throw ingredients in there and we wing it a lot. And sometimes it doesn't work, because she'll throw in like, a whole bag of flour and, be like, oh God, no. But we cook it anyway and it's like a bread instead of, cookies. But there's a fun part with healthy food.
Oh, it doesn't have to be so much fun. Now, would you mind sharing the anatomy of the protein bar? So if people are listening at home, they're like, okay, I'm on board. I want to try to make my own protein bar. Where do you start?
Yeah. So do you have an online, are you able to share the actual document? Because then I can just.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So the anatomy of the bar is, the way I divide it is into kind of physical anatomy. So I talk about like the body of a bar, right? Which is kind of what you always need, which is what's giving a bar or a truffle the texture. So if you take the body out, you end up with like a mush, right? Something that sticks in your teeth, it's liquidy or whatever else. So you need a body, which is what you chew into. So it's almond flour is a good body. Cocoa powder is a good body if you like things very dark, or coconut flour or oats. So you need a body. Then you need a binder, which is usually a nut butter, or if people don't like nuts, they can use a seed butter. And, almond butter, hazelnut butter, peanut butter, pumpkin seed butter, all these kind of butters are out there. So you combine your body with your nut butter binder. You add your sweetener of choice. It can be like a natural sweetener like agave or maple syrup or coconut sugar. Or if you want to go low carb, you add your sweetener that's like stevia drops. Then you need your protein powder of choice, whey protein, pea protein. Nowadays, there's so many. There's even like cricket protein. But with the understanding that each protein behaves differently, so you have to account different amounts of body depending on how much protein powder you use. So it's protein powder, body, binder, sweetener, and then add-ons, which is where the fun thing happens. It's like chocolate chips or nuts or pieces of dates or pieces of dried fruit, or that's where your personal kind of choice comes in. And then you bind it all together with a tiny bit of milk. I use almond milk a lot because I love the taste. Or you can find it with a tiny bit of water, but I just find almond milk just kind of gives it that taste and creaminess. And that's it. You just roll it into balls. You make a dough that resembles Play-Doh, that comes apart from your hands and doesn't stick all over. And then you roll it into balls, or you flatten it on a tray, and then you refrigerate it and cut it into bars. And when I give people the anatomy, we walk through it, and the table's set up into, here are all the bodies, here's all the binders, here's all the protein powders, and then they walk down and they choose. But they often will add them in not wrong amounts, but different amounts. So they'll add too much nut butter. So anyway, so the anatomy, and what I was trying to say is that you can't get it wrong. So people might think they end up with something really watery, right, or sticky. Well, not to worry, just add more body and the body will dry up the stickiness. Or if it's too crumbly, they just add more milk. Or if it's not sweet enough, well, more sweetener. Or you kind of adapt that way. And once you know what works with what, then you can, freestyle at will. And that's kind of the basic gist and what we always start out with, because it gives you a good basis and a good kind of platform from which to really, experiment and go nuts with the nuts.
I love it. Now, what is next in store for you? Do you have a bunch of workshops coming up, a new book release?
No, so the second cookbook came out at the end of last year, and the second edition of the first one came out in January this year. And right now I'm working towards releasing a new range of cookie dough, which has been in the work for 18 plus months. It's been like really full on. So we're gonna release it here first in the UK, and then release it in the US soon after that. So it's gonna be pretty crazy, but so exciting, because I was looking at a way to make homemade protein bars and a product that can be transformed and offer that to people, in the sense that you can bake it into cookies, or you can eat it, or you can do whatever you want with it. So that's kind of what's in the pipeline, and I'm so excited and nervous. It's like, it's kind of like, like a new baby into the world, and
That sounds amazing. So we're wrapping up right around our half an hour mark, and I'm getting carried away because I'm learning so much and having so much fun. Now, usually I do pester all of my guests right as we wrap up with a favorite book of all time that had an influence on you.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. It is amazing. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
I love it. It's such an awesome kind of book for life, of how to handle challenges and deal with things that come your way. And the take-home message is you do it one bird at a time. And it ties into what the book is about. And the author talks about her little brother being on holiday and having, over the summer, this really long project about birds that he procrastinated on the whole summer. And the night before, he's like freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. And the dad is like, listen, son, just take it bird by bird, like one bird at a time. And then he finished a project that way. And, it's so simple, but it's so, I don't know, it's like so true.
Wonderful message. Yeah.
It's like one step at a time and one bird at a time, and then you finish your bird project. But the whole book is lovely, the whole author and the way she explains everything and talks about everything. It's just a really easy to read and fun book that I recommend to everybody, and I just love it.
Oh, thank you so much. And of course, all of the resources that we discussed in the episode, the anatomy of the protein bar, resources and links to your website, to your books, and if you have any workshops coming up, all of that is going to be listed and available. It's if you have not seen Protein Pal, you absolutely have to go on it. As you probably realized from my story in the beginning, it is completely life-changing. And if you're the kind of person that still thinks that dessert is, something that's completely out of the question, even if you are trying to follow pretty strict macros, or if you're in contest prep or whatever, that is a myth. You can, you said, have your cake and eat it too. And that is really the theme. There's so many wonderful themes on your website. And of course, the Think Outside the Shake is one of my favorite. So thank you so much. Thank you for talking to me on your birthday, which is awesome. Happy birthday one
Thank
more
you.
time.
Oh, no, this is an awesome way to celebrate. So thank you.
Thank you so much for everything that you are and everything that you do. You know, you're making life so wonderful and so happy for people in a rough situation, especially if you are dieting. Like it was truly life-changing for me, and anybody that I've showed your website, your recipes had just, you know, it's like an epiphany. It's an epiphany. It's an epiphany moment, and once you go protein POW, you just never go back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is awesome.
So before we kind of wrap everything up, is there any final thoughts, anything that you wanted to share with the audience? We give a little bit of open mic time in case there's a message that you want to send out or anything that you want people to know about.
Well, I guess just when it comes to food, to not be scared or buy into negative messaging, to me is a big thing, or to misleading messaging. And in particular, when it comes to I'm very passionate about protein powders being aimed towards women and dieting being something that women are sold to as if like all women want to diet. And I remember going to this one show, and it was a protein powder stand, and it was strength and fitness, men's protein powder, and then diet at weight loss was the women's side. And I just got so angry at that.
Yeah, what the hell?
Women, like we do not need to all be dieting or to not pursue strength, you know. And I would say that to be wary of products that are sold as that make you feel less in order to sell you more, you know.
Want to prey on your insecurities?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, you know, making positive changes and following a healthier diet is all about, you know, good, like pursuing strength and nutrition and doing things not out of fear, but out of choice for something better. That I find that's one of the most empowering things, and that is sustainable in the long term and empowering, and you know, something that, I don't know if I'm repeating myself here, that actually builds instead of make you feel worse. So you make a tiny change and then you have to feel worse all over again. And then, you know, like to just break that chain of guilt that often is associated with eating in general. To me, you know,
especially for women, yeah.
Absolutely. We shouldn't be, you know, afraid of food or choose healthy alternatives out of fear because, oh God, what if I eat a normal piece of cake or whatever? This is about choosing more nutrition dense food because they make you feel better, and knowing that, you know, anything else is not going to suddenly like destroy you or anything, but just being empowered and having fun with food.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for ending on a beautiful message. I'm going to let you go because it is your birthday. Thank you again so much. This has been absolutely wonderful. The ultimate protein chef, the ultimate wizard. Thank you so much for taking the time.
You. This is awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your birthday.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Hello.
Hey Alphas, it's Dr. Antonella from Fierce and Flawless, the Female Project. I cannot wait to bring you more incredible stories and exceptional insights from women who made an impact. So join me on this journey. Subscribe and comment with nominations for guests you would like featured next. I want to deliver content that ignites a spark in you, so your feedback is extremely important to me. To connect with me and to get the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.thefemaleproject.net or add me on Instagram at dr.antonella. Thank you for listening and stay tuned.